Welcome into another edition of our Cubs Recap Podcast, a presentation of our Recap YouTube channel, and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcast with my partner right there, Gordon Wittenmyer. I'm David Kaplan. The Chicago Cubs and the rest of Major League Baseball just finished the general managers meetings. You were there. Next up, the winter meetings. And then we get hot and heavy into free agency here over the next few weeks and into the winter and into 2025. So as you looked around at the GM meetings and heard everything that's going on with the Cubs and Max Fried and Corbin Burnes and Juan Soto, I think it's safe to say they won't even make a call on Soto. I don't believe they'll make a call on Corbin Burnes. Max Fried or someone of that ilk might be more in line with their appetite. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree with that. I think Max Fried is the one to keep your eye on. And then the rest of the pitching market that's in that tier or right below him as well. And then obviously the bullpen arms. But I'll tell you this, Cap, being around those GM meetings and talking to more than half of the heads of baseball operation in baseball, I talked to them a lot about what's going on in this market financially.
This market, not just Chicago. You mean the market in general?
In the industry wide, in the free agent and trade market this year. There are roughly half the teams in baseball dealing with some serious revenue losses, at least uncertainty for a few of them, definitely losses for most of them over the cord cutting. And in particular, a lot of teams still dealing with the bankruptcy of Diamond Sports Group, which is the Bally's since rebranded to FanDuel Sports Network. Three of the teams are in the Cubs division. And so what's happening is, and we saw this last year with a couple of teams, the Diamondbacks and Padres went to MLB's platforms instead of because of all this, the bankruptcy proceedings. And then the Guardians are in that boat now. The Twins are in that boat now. The Twins contract ran out. They froze payroll a year ago. There's a lot of these teams right now that are in flux. Some of them just made agreements to go to MLB. Some of them took cut rate deals with the Diamond Sports Group companies. And those are high risk because this bankruptcy could eventually lead to a more dramatic bankruptcy and liquidation. Then you lose everything. So all these teams don't know how much money they literally don't know how much money they're going to make in areas that used to be locked in. I think that takes a lot of teams out of certain player markets. And the executives are saying that makes sense. We have to wait and see. Jed Hoyer said on this subject that that's something everybody's talking about right now. And yes, there's a lot of concern in the industry.
Okay, so what does that mean then for the Chicago Cubs and for this massive fan base, which I am proudly a part of? Because to be honest with you, and I know it's reality and there's financial this and financial that, I don't want to hear it. Okay, you're not going to get Soto for $650 million, whatever. I didn't expect it anyway. But I don't want to hear that we can't get a closer if we add a starter and we can't get a little help for the offense because if we sign that guy, it precludes us from I don't want to hear that. I really don't. I go to games as a fan. I sit out in the bleachers this summer. I took my son to a game. I looked around. Nothing but people there. I want to know how you're going to fix your moribund, mediocre 83-win club. That's it.
That's a great point because the Brewers, who won the division, the Cardinals, who are the only other team that approaches the Cubs in that division in economic muscle, and the Reds, who you could argue, maybe along with the Pirates, have the best young talent in the division. All of those teams are dealing with this. And the Reds just backed out of their Diamond Sports deal. Milwaukee already did. And the Cardinals made an agreement on a cut rate deal, but they've also said, we are cutting payroll. And they got rid of two of those pitchers that they signed last year for their rotation already. That means, to your point, there should be no excuses. This team, This Cubs team that brings back almost everybody, and now we know Bellinger's one of them, every position in that lineup is accounted for. Most of a good starting rotation is accounted for. There's some arms to be optimistic about in the bullpen that they need to add to. They definitely need to add a starting pitcher. That division is there for the taking for the Chicago Cubs, and the economic factors in play this winter suggest they could, relatively speaking, be in an even greater position of strength than they normally are against their division rivals. So there are no excuses, man. They need to go in and get, if you're not going to be in on Burns, fine. You better get Max Fried. He's the next best pitcher.
Or make a trade and acquire somebody. If think back a few years ago, the Cubs said, we're going in the wrong direction. We're going to trade you, Darvish, and all his money. Now, whether Owen Casey or anyone out of that deal ever turns into a player, whatever, it was a clear salary dump. That's what it was. Let's call it for what it was.
No doubt.
So is there somebody out there, whether that's
The
Minnesota or Arizona or Seattle, that are having all these financial issues, Baltimore, whoever it is, going, yeah, we got to move a salary. All right, you got a good farm system. Give us a couple prospects. You can have that guy. Because like a great real estate investor looks around and goes, wow, the market's down. I got cash. Boom, I'm stealing that building and that house and that property. That's the way the Cubs have to think.
Absolutely. And yes, the Diamondbacks have already said they believe they're dealing from a position of strength for pitching. They're going to make some of their guys available. That's definitely something you should look at. So, and they've talked about that trades are something they're going to look at. Maybe trade some of those prospects. They've got 8 of the top 100 ranked prospects in the MLB pipeline rankings. Mm-hmm. Every one of those guys should be available because none of them are the number one guy in baseball or the next Paul Skeens. They've got some nice, promising guys. Obviously, that's how you make a top 100 list, but they don't have that guy that's the it guy that we've seen the Orioles have for a few years and that we've seen the Pirates have occasionally over these last several years, or even the Reds had last year when Ellie De La Cruz came up. So I think every one of those guys should at least be open to discussion, depending on who's offering what, because this is the year for some of what we're talking about right now, the opportunity that exists. But after what's gone on the last 2 years, this is the year to make sure that you take that division by the throat with every means available to you.
Okay, so let's look at the team that is currently wearing Cubby blue, and let's discuss what they can fix, what they can upgrade. I know Matt Shaw has now rocketed up to the number one prospect in their system. I think it was yesterday. I was following along his performance in this winter league he's playing in, and he went 5 for 6 with a home run and drove in a bunch of runs, and he's a really, really good player. Where they're going to play him, I don't know. We have Nico Horner.
If Paredes plays like he did when he came over from Tampa, there's your spot.
Jed has come out and said he's not going anywhere. We believe in him.
He's not going anywhere, but if he's underperforming, you find a sprained ankle to stick him on the IL with.
No question. But Jed said we believe in him. That's why we acquired him, and we think he's going to be fine. Okay, so how do you fix an offense that was impotent for a large chunk of the season? Michael Busch isn't going anywhere. Not saying he should. Nico Horner's coming off flexor tendon.
Wait, we talk about this. We've talked about this for maybe 4 podcasts.
Okay, so tell me how you fix it now that you've been.
You fix it by making your pitching even better, because there's no place.
You're not fixing the offense at all.
Where are you going to go get the guy? What are you going to go get? You going to go get Vlad?
I would love to.
Okay, so what is he? You get rid of Suzuki because you're going to want Busch as a lefty in that lineup somewhere most days, assuming that he doesn't take a huge step back in performance. So what are you going to do with him? What I'm saying is, like, you're going to trade. Is that what you're going to trade for? And then
is there a really good catcher that's going to be on the market?
I don't know that catching is where you're going to upgrade your offense. They're talking about Travis Denard. He's a nice player.
From the Mets, right?
Yeah, he was with the Braves for a while.
Yep.
That guy. Yeah.
Yep.
So Yeah. You can. There are places to improve around the edges. You have some performance in there. I think, the idea that maybe Dansby's not as bad. He's not going to be a superstar. That Hap doesn't start slow again. That Suzuki picks up where he left off. That Bellinger performs somewhere in the middle of what he did in 23 and 24. Those are the kinds of places that maybe Bush takes a step forward and Paredes doesn't suck.
Okay, then
those are the things that you're looking at. And then you hammer down, double down, triple down, quadruple down on your run prevention and your pitching. If you get Max Fried, by the way, you're getting a 3-time Gold Glover as well. He fields his position. So these are areas that make your club better. It's already a good club. It's not a great club. It's not a playoff club. It's already a good club. If you can improve incrementally in some areas, which is what they're doing, I don't like it. I think you need to go big. That's not what they do.
Okay, so then I have nicknamed the front office of the Chicago Bulls the Settlers. It's stuck. People use it. The Settlers. They are prepared and cool with settling for mediocrity. This isn't a shot at Jed Hoyer because he can only spend what his bosses allow him to spend. You're telling me then that ownership, like I was just talking with Ryan McGuffey and you before we came on. I watched the Comeback on Netflix, 3 parts. Highly recommend you watch it. My wife and I were locked in on it. It's awesome about the Red Sox 03 and the hole to the Yankees in 04. They come back and all this inside stuff. And there's a phone call in there where Theo said the phone rang for Terry Francona. It's the late Larry Lucchino, at the time the president of the team. And he said, this is effing unacceptable. This bullshit has to stop now. And they basically told Theo, here's a checkbook. I don't care what you spend. We got to beat the Yankees. And they finally got over the hump. I truly then believe that ownership here, we want to be competitive. We want to put a good team out there. And if at the trade deadline we're in it, we'll let you spend to try and get over the top. But there's not going to be a Tom Ricketts, Todd, Pete, Laura calling Craig Counsell or calling Jed going, this is unacceptable. We want to win and win now. I don't think there's that type of pressure or that type of desire.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned Pete, because that says more about this ownership than anything. What they care most about is what they get out of this personally. And one of the things that they've done over the years is trade off the brand of the Chicago Cubs to raise the profile of their family name. And that single-handedly got Pete Ricketts elected to governor and now senator in Nebraska. That's what they care about. When it comes to winning and going in and going big, you ain't going to see that out of these guys. The reason you saw it at times with Theo was because Theo had enough leverage with them. He had a relationship with them when they brought him in, and a credibility and a voice in that organization. Jed's it was his lieutenant, right? And he's just not going to carry the same, and he's a different personality. So these guys are given marching orders on going not quite all the way in on this stuff. And then Jed gets handed those walking orders. And then he winds up with the second best guy, the fourth best guy. The year that all those shortstops were out there, you didn't see him go after Trey Turner, which might have been one of the best fits. You saw him go after the guy, the number 4 guy in terms of years and money out there. Got you a nice defender and the 4th best bat. This is what he does. But that part of that is also his personality, the risk-averse nature. So when I've said that his job should be on the line, I agree. I don't backtrack off of that, but I agree with you that this starts at the top with the marching orders.
Oh, it's way above Jed.
And when we look around baseball, look at what the Phillies did. Like, you can say, well, Dave Dombrowski, when he goes in and runs a team, they go big. Yeah, well, that's why you hire Dave Dombrowski. And Middleton in Philly is an aggressive owner. That's a top-down philosophy that has created a roster of superstars. They're in it every year, and they're not knocking on the door of the playoffs every year. They're knocking on the door of November every year.
Correct.
And we know the Yankees. You don't even have to go there. That's top-down since the days of George Steinbrenner.
Same with the Dodgers.
Dodgers, same thing. And so this is, and the Mets now. The Mets with Cohen. So all that matters. And the Red Sox there was a time when the Red Sox were like that, and they've won 4 championships.
The Red Sox are acting like the Cubs.
They are now. Yeah. And so to me, especially when you're in a division that you could go in and just own.
You could.
That should be your approach, because you have the fan base that supports that nationally, even internationally. And when it comes to things, what I said about what's going on at GM meetings with the economy of this market, that's because of cord cutting and streaming. You're in a position of power there too, as you go forward in that landscape, because you have an international freaking market.
Yeah, you have a brand that other teams don't.
Yes.
There isn't the San Diego Padres ownership. Peter Seidler, who died, he was a guy who was, I don't care what it costs, I want to win.
Yep.
And then he passed away from cancer, and they've started to pare it back a little bit. The other owners are not,
and they're one of those, and that's part of the reason that they're one of those teams.
Correct.
They had a massive RSN deal.
Correct.
That had morphed and devolved into this.
Correct. But when you look at the Cubs with their brand, they're not the Padres and the Mariners and the Orioles. Good team, no question. And it's embarrassing at times to have this massive fan base, pack the ballpark, and yet we're not even going to make a phone call on Juan Soto, 26-year-old generational superstar. We're not even going to make a phone call on Shohei Ohtani. I mean, it's sad. It is.
Well, you know where I stand on this. Yeah, you're talking my language. That's 1,000% right.
I'm not saying you should get everyone. No one does get everyone. I'm not saying that I would have given Ohtani $700 million all backloaded where I've got, credit card debt up the wazoo, so to speak. I understand it. But when you start the season and your owner, I've played the tape a billion times on the radio, your owner said we should win the division this year. He said it
the year they lost 103 games, and Theo was trying to lose 103 games.
Yeah, but this year he believed it. He really did. And people in that organization believed we should win the division this year. And he said it. This year, I believe we should win the division. And guess what? You don't have a closer because you're out of money?
It was the same damn team except for the manager. It was the same damn team.
Correct.
So here's the thing. It better not be the same damn team going into Mesa next spring.
Okay, so give me a name. Who gets traded?
Well, I'm telling you, if you go get Max Fried, now all of a sudden, that with health, what you've done is you've replaced Kyle Hendricks with Max Fried. And
upgrade.
Yeah, with all due respect to Kyle.
We love Kyle.
This isn't 2016 Kyle Hendricks. This is
Correct.
A guy that struggled.
Okay, so you would have Steele, Imanaga. Let's assume it's Max Fried, Jamison Tyone, and then
and now you've got these young guys behind him who have to fight.
Right, whether it's
starts.
Jordan Wicks or Cade Horton or Javier Assad, you can go 7-8 deep in quality starters.
And what's going on with starters nowadays? Instead of 6-7 inning starters for the guys toward the front of your rotation, I mean, it's 5-6 innings. And so if you've got a guy who's maybe he's coming off of something, or you're just going to back off his workload, he might piggyback him with Assad or something like that. So now this depth, just by adding that one frontline guy, now you've created all this
lengthens
depth.
Your depth of your starting pitching.
So
but you got to go get a closer, Gordon. You cannot go into the season going, well, we'll see where we're at in July. No, because the games you lose in April, May, and June mean just as much as the games you lose in July, August, and September.
You need to go get late inning reliability. It doesn't have to be a closer, and it should be multiple arms. And I've said that over and over again. You just throw some reliable numbers at that. That one guy isn't there. Like that Mariano Rivera is not there to go.
Josh Hader was there last year. How did he do?
Oh, you could have there. If he was there, I'd say go get him. He's not there.
Okay,
and there aren't very many of those guys.
And none of these teams
isn't there.
And none of these teams with financial issues going on are going to trade you their closer. I don't buy that. I don't buy it.
Well, we already know the closer in Cleveland staying put. They've already said that. And that would be one of your examples. they plan to try. In fact, I had a long conversation with their team president. They plan to keep trying to win, even at the margins, even if they wind up, and they don't know yet exactly where their payroll budget's going to fall, but even if they wind up with less than they had last year, and they had less than most last year, and wound up a hell of a lot better looking than the Cubs, with guys that looked a hell of a lot closer to superstars than anybody the Cubs had. So, but they're going to keep their closer to that point. So if you've got it, let's say if you've got a team out there that's got a closer under contract who's one of these teams, and they're a possible playoff team, they're going to keep him.
Okay, give me a name of one guy who's on the current roster that you think could get moved. Give me one.
I don't think there's like.
So you don't expect.
I don't expect.
Your silence is deafening. You don't expect there to be some like, whoa, the Cubs traded who?
Yeah, they're going to add to the pitching. So any pitcher that's got value isn't going anywhere. And there's only a couple of tradable guys in the position player group that you're going to get any value at all out of. And like Michael Busch is one of them. But he's by definition a value guy to have. Not only he's young enough, service time, and so he's not expensive. He's got a lot of club control. Those are guys that teams that don't that you might trade him for a superstar, but again, he's already produced last year at the big league level. You went and got him last year, and he did what you would have hoped he would do.
Yeah, he had a solid year. He wasn't a star.
And now he's got that experience under his belt. So you could trade him, and you run a huge risk of not getting enough return or of having to fill it. Plus, he's a left-handed bat. I keep saying this, you got to have left-handed threats in your order. Then you got a guy like Nico, who you've wanted to trade for a year now.
Hold on. Let's just be clear. I'm not advocating to trade Nico. I picked the one guy on the roster before he had to have flexor tendon surgery that I felt like no trade clause Suzuki, no trade clause on Ian Happ. No one's taken Bellinger's money. No one's taken Dansby Swanson's contract. So by the deduction process, Nico would be the guy that would get traded. I like Nico Hoerner. I'm not advocating it. I'm telling you he makes the most sense. But now with flexor tendon surgery, people are probably like, I got to see him first to see if he's healthy.
Yeah, and I said this to you long before that came up. I wouldn't trade him anyway because he's a contact hitter in a game where there's not enough contact, and the teams that have more of it do better. He's also not just a plus defender in the middle infield. He's a Gold Glove winner at second base and an excellent shortstop. Perfectly, like he might be the best backup shortstop in the game. And when both of those guys are healthy in the middle infield, you have one of the best defensive middle infielders. And this team is going to win with run prevention. My point being that if you trade him for a bat, you've created a hole in your run prevention. So you might be gaining a run over here and giving away a run over there. And that to me makes no sense. So there's too much of a deficit you create by trying to get some, whatever the return back is. And I'm not sure that it's superstar return anyway.
Probably not. Gordon, always fun having you here in the studios, kid.
You know what we need to do, Cap? Huh. We need to get Jed Hoyer on.
So
here.
I talked to Jed the other day for quite a while, and I said, hey, we've got our brand new studios. Our new mural has been installed. And guess what? Would you come up and do the show with me and Gordon here? And he said, 100% in. So we're going to work on it for the next week or two.
I've got him on video agreeing to it.
I did. I saw that.
We got to cue it up.
We'll get it. You'll hear it. And we will get Jed Hoyer in the studio right here on the Recap, the Cubs Recap Podcast.
One more question for you, Cap, because you've been a little bit angry with the Bears lately.
I have been. I don't think Coach Eberflus is coming here to do a podcast.
Yeah, probably not. Well, we don't want him anyway. But anyhow, I mean, they're terrible right now. I mean, we thought, I mean, it's a little bit of a mirage what we saw earlier in the year. The Bulls aren't. What are the Bulls going to be this year?
Bulls are going to be less than 500.
If the White Sox lose 100 games, that's a 21 game
Improvement. Yeah, correct.
And I don't know, the Blackhawks even playing?
They're playing. They're not. They're okay. They're very mediocre.
Are the Cubs the closest to a championship?
No question about it.
There's no excuses here, man.
There is no excuses here whatsoever. How about this? So you've got all 5 teams. Not one of them would you go, I'm betting on that team to win a title. And 3 of the 5 you can't even watch without an antenna.
If you're a businessman who owns a team in this market and you're closer to a championship than anybody else,
Push all in and dominate the sports landscape.
don't you want to tap into that?
Yes.
You got the most excitement of anybody of any of the individual team's fans.
Yes.
You could
dominate the market. Dominate it.
I'm going to sneak in your podcast and just remind you that the last playoff win in this town came from the south side of Chicago.
Dude, take your Sox cap off, would you please?
I'm letting you know how awful it is. It's a reminder how awful it is.
And go mess with your antenna. Watch your team.
Try to find a way to win 84 games.
Literally the worst team in the history of baseball is in this town. And the Cubs can't take advantage of that? Are you fucking shitting me?
Gordon, have a great day. That is a wrap for another edition of our Cubs Recap Podcast, a presentation of our Recap YouTube channel, and available audio only everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. For Gordon Wittenmyer, the surprise ambush appearance from Ryan McGuffey of our White Sox Recap Podcast, I'm David Kaplan. Take that.